If someone asked you to name a queer icon, who would you say?
Britney, Christina, Shirley Bassey, Tina, Madonna, Celine Dion, Whitney Houston, Mariah Carey.
Bruce Springsteen.
This is Because the Bus Belongs to Us.
A serious journalistic quest to get Bruce Springsteen recognised as the queer icon we know that he is.
Listen to Because the Bus Belongs to Us on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
You're listening to Proxy, a show about investigating niche emotional conundrums through conversations with strangers who have shared experience. I'm Yowei Shaw. This is part 3 of my quest to figure out what the hell is up with Proxy conversations. Have I made a huge mistake sinking my savings into a podcast I can't explain? Now, you might ask, why am I subjecting you to 4 episodes of me digging at the same question while sweating in a tiny recording booth? Surely I have more important things to cover. Surely I've made my case for why you should go to patreon.com/proxypodcast to become a Patreon member at $5 a month before August 22nd so we can unlock funding to make season 1. And if I haven't, surely you'd like me to stop talking about this Patreon campaign. Me too. But here's the thing. I am learning things. And I hope you are too. In some ways, this extremely niche, silly quest is about something we all struggle with. How to feel better when we're feeling stuck. So, I didn't grow up with therapy. I can't remember the T word ever coming out of my Taiwanese immigrant parents' mouths. But by my mid-20s, I knew I was supposed to be in therapy. It was just something you do as a well-adjusted adult, if you can afford it. And so, over the next 10 years, I went through 6 different therapists. They were all fine. I never had an aha moment, but I'm sure it helped. Or did it? I don't know. What I do know is that even though I shelled out thousands of dollars, I had no idea what this therapy was supposed to do, how exactly it was supposed to help me feel better. In today's episode, I finally scratched the itch of looking into how therapy works, or at least one kind of therapy that has a lot of similarities to Proxy conversations. Psychodrama is an experiential and action-based therapy that's a blend of theater techniques and psychology. If you've practiced role-playing in therapy, that comes from psychodrama. It's the second oldest psychotherapy, right after psychoanalysis. In fact, its founder, Jacob Moreno, had a rivalry with Freud, and allegedly once showed up at a lecture to nag him. Psychodrama used to be one of the most popular psychotherapies in the U.S. It was used in 1/3 of mental hospitals. It had the attention of the president, the support of Harvard University. And then psychodrama died. Well, not completely. Psychodrama is actually flourishing in other countries like England, Spain, Bulgaria. But in the U.S., you probably haven't heard of psychodrama.
Hey, how are you, Yowei?
Hello. Dr. Scott Giacomucci is an expert in group work and psychodrama, and he's trying to bring it back. He teaches a course on psychodrama at Bryn Mawr College, and he's the director of the Phoenix Center for Experiential Trauma Therapy in Media, Pennsylvania. He also wrote a textbook about psychodrama that he gives away for free, which immediately made me like him. Scott first came to psychodrama against his will. He was 15, not doing great, getting into trouble, dealing with emotional issues, substance use, and drinking problems. So one day, his dad dragged him to a 3-day psychodrama training in a hotel.
And I was like really resistant and unsure what the hell this, I'm allowed to curse on here, right?
Yeah, please.
Unsure what the hell this thing was.
But then Scott enrolled in a more intensive program of psychodrama therapy.
And then shortly after, I had a best friend died of a heroin overdose. And I went and did a psychodrama about it, where I got to talk to my best friend who died.
Oh my gosh.
In the psychodrama.
Whoa.
That's when I really got convinced about psychodrama as an effective approach.
In this episode, I talked to Scott about how psychodrama helped him grieve, how he practices psychodrama today, and he breaks down the mechanics of proxy conversations and tries his psychodrama methods on me. So, Scott, if there was like a picture of you before that psychodrama and then there was a picture of you after, what would they look like?
So before the psychodrama, I was like really ruminating on the loss, almost to the point of obsessing about it. Questions about what if I had just reached out to him that night? What if I hadn't said this? Struggling to make sense of it all, questioning the meaning of life and all these existential. It was like a bit of an existential crisis for my best friend to die in that way. And then in the psychodrama, I got to say all the things to him that I didn't get to say in real life before he died. And I got to role reverse and become him and say the things that I needed to hear from him before he died that I didn't get a chance to hear for closure, in order to kind of resolve the stuckness and the existential questions. Maybe not all of them, but resolve them enough that I could take that loss and transform it into motivation for something positive.
How did you know what to say when you were role-playing as your best friend?
It was just in the spontaneity of the moment. You know, the saying, stepping into someone else's shoes. In psychodrama, we quite literally do that. And when you do that experientially and in an embodied way, rather than just as a intellectual exercise, there's new perspectives, ideas, and insights that seem to spontaneously come through because of the action and because of the embodiment of it that we wouldn't probably have access to if we were just sitting and talking about it.
Okay, I want to get into the mechanics of how psychodrama works.
Yeah.
Can you just walk through with a real life example? Also, I'm sorry that I'm sweating. This is what happens in the summer.
That's okay. It's a really hot day.
Yeah.
In psychodrama, the only way we get to spontaneity is through a warming up process. So in a psychodrama group, the way that it works in terms of the mechanics is I'll come in and facilitate a warm up. I'll get the clients moving around, connecting with each other. And then I'll say, all right, who would like to volunteer a topic and volunteer yourself to be the protagonist of our psychodrama today? And usually multiple people will volunteer, and then I'll facilitate the group making a choice. And so in this example, a client had experienced childhood sexual abuse. And this client is now an adult and really struggles with how it impacted them, the rage that they have about it, and how the people that were supposed to protect them weren't there to do that. And so I facilitated a scene where I had the client identify some support and strengths that they needed to face the sexual trauma and to stop blaming themselves for what had happened. And they picked things like courage, and I think they picked God. And with each support they identified, I had them choose someone in the group that they would like to play the role. So somebody in the group played the role of their courage, and they had a dialogue with their courage. And they reversed roles and became the voice of their courage and spoke to themselves as courage. And then, because they wanted to stop blaming themselves, I suggested that we set up a scene where they could speak to themselves as a child at the time of the trauma. And so they kind of used the furniture in the room to portray what their bedroom looked like as a child, and made sure the bedroom was not the place where the trauma actually happened. So we're not reenacting the trauma scene in psychodrama.
That sounds very dangerous. Yes.
Yes. So instead, we're looking for the experience that would be healing related to the trauma. So in this scene, the client as an adult with somebody playing the role of them as a child got to re-enter their childhood bedroom and speak to themselves as a child, and to really offer themselves empathy and validation, allow themselves to feel the rage and the sadness and the confusion, and to really convince themselves as a child that this was not your fault and you don't need to blame yourself for this. And then they role reverse with themselves as a child, and now they get to become themselves as a child and express the unexpressed emotions while the role player plays the role of them as an adult and offers the validation and the support and the encouragement and the love.
Yeah, I mean, this reminds me of a popular technique that's featured on RuPaul's Drag Race, where, he has the final 3 contestants, like he shows them a photo of themselves when they were children, and then he has them talk directly to their younger self.
Oh, wow.
Seems related.
Yeah, very psychodramatic.
Maybe this is a dumb question, but I'm just thinking about those obligatory kind of group exercises that you have to do as a kid sometimes when you go to class or you go to a camp, and like nobody wants to do it. And I imagine there's a lot of people who are not comfortable with acting, and this would all feel very foreign to them. Do people ever just like fail to enter the fantasy because they are not acting good enough, or they don't know how to act, or are just uncomfortable with acting?
Yeah, though in psychodrama, it's not about performance, and it's not role playing like you normally think of role playing. And I'm one of those people that's terrified of the theater and role playing in general. But I became a psychodrama trainer. Although it borrows techniques from theater, it's very different than theater. So it's all about the process, not about the performance or the product. It's like an experiment. We're like giving each other permission to explore, try things out, laugh and have fun, make mistakes, be spontaneous, and say whatever comes to mind and see what happens.
Why is the spontaneity so important for the healing process?
Yeah. So in psychodrama, we believe that spontaneity is the thing that creates change. So our theory of change is spontaneity theory, which is radically different than psychoanalysis or cognitive behavioral therapy or really any other kind of therapy. And so in psychodrama, we define spontaneity as this sort of energy that we can warm up to that allows us to have new responses to old reoccurring situations, or allows us to have adequate responses when we're faced with a brand new situation we've never been in. Spontaneity is what allows us to have a new response in those situations.
In some ways, it feels very practical and common sense.
Yeah.
You're having this problem. Let's see if you can come up with a new response or a new way to deal with the problem.
Exactly. Yep. For example, when I was getting ready to propose to my wife, I was all anxious about it. And I thought, man, I gotta talk to my father-in-law and get his blessing. And so I did a psychodrama about it. And I practiced what words I was going to use and how I was going to talk to my father-in-law. And so I got to practice responding in multiple different ways and working through my fears and emotions that may have blocked me off from showing up and saying exactly what I wanted to say.
Oh, that sounds exactly like the rehearsal.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the comedian Nathan Fielder's show, where he basically helps people rehearse all the possible outcomes to a situation they're emotionally hung up on. And he creates those possibilities to the nth degree with meticulous detail, constructing houses, building sets, hiring actors.
That's like on the extreme level.
A lot more expensive, too.
Yeah.
So the reason I came to you is because I'm on this quest to figure out what exactly is going down in these proxy conversations on this new show that I have. I know something magical goes down. People seem to get less stuck, but I don't know how and why. And I'm curious, what do you think is going on?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this. I think there's some overlaps with the proxy conversations you're facilitating and psychodrama conversations. One of the things that we do in psychodrama is we have these role-playing conversations, and it's very explicitly a role play. So, for example, like I was listening to one of the episodes on the podcast, and it was an HR person speaking to someone who had been laid off.
Right. It was a laid off couple talking to a proxy HR rep.
So if I was working with that couple or one of those individuals and we did a psychodrama, I would have them choose someone to play the role of the actual HR rep that laid them off. So I think what you're doing with proxy conversations is similar in that you're having an individual interact with someone who is literally in the role, the same role as someone else who held that role with them in a way that was difficult or harmful or confusing or impactful.
Yeah, it's so interesting because one of the questions that I've been getting, like pushbacks about the show, is like, why would that work? Why would talking to somebody who's not directly involved in your situation, who doesn't know exactly why you got laid off or why they did that to you, why would that help? Feels like imagination is involved here, that this proxy's experiences and insights will apply and be relevant.
Yep. Like on a neurobiological level, what I think is happening is that you're accessing the memory or the memory network related to the layoff or related to whatever the experience is. And in a different but very similar context, you're creating a new experience, a new memory that gets connected to the old one. But this new memory has a different level of safety and connection and understanding and empathy. And it gives the individual the opportunity to express the things that were unexpressed from the initial experience. So they're able to have some sort of catharsis and expression and closure, perhaps, and then absorb some new perspective and insight about the other role that was involved in the situation.
The catharsis piece, that is something that I have noticed in these proxy conversations. There's some kind of release. I remember it happening when the proxy HR rep apologized to the person who was laid off. And it just felt like something shifted in the room.
Yeah, that was a beautiful moment. I was listening to it last night. In psychodrama theory, there's actually two primary types of catharsis. The first type is the releasing, and we call it an abreactive catharsis. It's when you let go of, or you cry, or you yell, or you sweat, or you laugh. Something is leaving your body. But the second type of catharsis we call an integrative catharsis. And that's when we take in something new to replace the space that has now been created by what was let go of. And in psychodrama theory, the goal is to get to the integration, that the abreaction, the letting go of by itself, is not enough to create lasting change. And I think an integration, a new perspective, a new awareness, something new has to be taken in. And I think through the proxy conversations, the folks involved are experiencing the release and the catharsis, and then through hearing the other person's perspective, they're able to take in new insight.
I'm nodding my head very vigorously. This is all making more sense now. Another thing that I'm thinking about is in psychodrama, spontaneity is really important. And that also seems to be present in proxy conversations. It's a conversation. There's no script. Like there might be an interview prep, some idea of questions that you want to ask, but every conversation is essentially an improv interaction. Absolutely.
And I think another similarity is in the proxy conversation, both parties are showing up in their roles authentically and speaking their truth in the role. And in psychodrama, even the role players are showing up authentically and speaking their truth in the roles. That's really what separates psychodrama from a performance. is that the person who played the role of the younger version of the client who experienced the sexual trauma wasn't just performing the role. They were bringing themselves into the role and channeling their own anguish and sadness from their own childhood trauma. There's like a way that the two roles are connected in relationship with each other, that as one deepens into vulnerability and emotion, it pulls the other into it as well. Like a joining happens. And I think the moment you described in the Proxy conversation, perhaps that was what was happening there.
Okay, so we've been talking a lot about the similarities between psychodrama, which is a kind of therapy, and Proxy.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I make it very clear on my show that Proxy is not therapy.
Yeah.
I am not a therapist. I am not licensed to do anything related to therapy. So now I'm a little worried. I'm like, is it therapy or is it not therapy? How can I avoid Proxy conversations being therapy? How can I do this safely?
Yeah, it's a good question, Yowei. Well, most of the licensing boards that credential people to practice psychotherapy, they define the scope of practice, the scope of the license, to involve diagnosing and treating mental health issues. So I think as long as you're not explicitly trying to diagnose and treat a mental health issue through the Proxy conversation, then you're pretty safely avoiding it being therapy. Other people, when they define psychotherapy, they'll include in the definition something about how our childhood or past experiences are influencing our current day experience. So I think if you steer clear of childhood traumatic experience, having someone that experienced childhood sexual trauma, and then a Proxy being someone who perpetrated childhood sexual trauma.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you're what you're doing is clear. I think you're good.
I'm really glad to hear this. Okay, that's really useful to know. Thank you, Scott. So my last question for now, you promised that you would do a psychodrama demonstration with me.
Yeah.
Which I'm nervous about. After the break, Yowei talks to Yowei.
I think I'm more excited about the psychodrama we're about to do than you are.
Really? I'm excited.
Okay.
I'm nervous, but excited. Okay, so you suggested that we do a psychodrama. I have something in mind. I don't know if it's right, but can I run it by you?
Yeah. No right or wrongs. What do you have in mind?
Okay, so currently I'm feeling a lot of anxiety about whether this current campaign to get more Patreon members so that we can hire Kim, our reporter, producer, get her more hours. I'm feeling anxious about us not making our goal. That's the situation.
Okay. So the situation is you're feeling anxious about not reaching the goal so that you can hire Kim. So if we were to do a psychodrama about this, what is it that you'd like to accomplish at the end of the psychodrama related to this anxiety, this situation?
Well, I can't change whether or not it will happen, whether we will make our goal, but I don't want us to be bummed. I don't want to be bummed if we don't make it. I mean, there's a high likelihood we will not make it by August 22nd. So, yeah, I would like to not be bummed, especially because we are now knee deep in making the first season. And so, there's a lot more to do.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So your goal would be to not be bummed if you didn't make the goal.
Yeah.
Okay. What would you rather be instead of bummed?
Whew. Okay. Well, I guess I would like to be proud that we even tried that we're doing this independently and we're shooting our shot, even though it's scary. I'd like to feel gratitude for all the people who have signed up. I wouldn't want our listeners to feel bad, especially the people who have given. And we have seen an uptick in Patreon memberships, which is amazing to see that kind of support.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. So you want to feel proud and you want to feel grateful.
Yes.
I mean, you're doing a courageous thing, going out on your own and making this independent podcast and asking for support and having these spontaneous conversations based on this idea of Proxy, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So in Psychodrama, first we get our contract, which is our goal. So our goal is to feel proud and grateful, regardless of whether you make it to the fundraising goal or not, the Patreon goal. All right. So there's lots of different ways we could set up a psychodrama from here. For the sake of time and simplicity, I think I'm going to suggest, and you can tell me if this feels okay or not, that we talk to Yowei in the future on August 22nd.
Okay.
Would you be up for that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And because this is going to involve a little bit of movement. Are you able to move your microphone if you were to move out of the chair, or is it attached to you?
I'm in a tiny recording booth, but I can stand up and I can move.
Yeah, I'm going to invite you maybe to stand next to or beside your chair.
Okay, I'm going to move the chair because there's really not room for me to stand as well as the chair to be.
Or even better.
Okay, so this is the moment I unplugged my microphone while maneuvering the chair to make room for me to stand. Very professional of me. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Sorry about that. I'm ready.
That's okay. So instead of moving out of the chair, why don't we just have you shift your body position in the chair so you're like facing one direction? There you go.
Okay.
So this direction you're currently in, let's designate that as the role of you 3 weeks in the future.
Okay.
And then when you switch to the other way, that's you today, August 1st.
Okay.
So I'm going to facilitate a conversation between you today and you 3 weeks from today on the deadline of this goal. All right?
Okay.
So I'm going to ask you just to imagine that you're sitting next to yourself here. And really just feel the presence of future Yowei right next to you on the date of this deadline. And could you tell yourself about the fears, the anxiety that you have that you referenced earlier?
Yeah, I am feeling really nervous about not making our goal and failing Kim. I'm also worried about disappointing our listeners. I'm worried about looking pathetic and like we're not a show worth listening to and supporting. I'm worried that this is going to bum the team out, and we're still making the first season regardless of whether we make this goal, and there's a lot more work to do, and I don't want to like have this hanging over us.
Yeah. You're doing great, Yowei. Can I offer you what's called a doubling statement, where I'm gonna say something, and if it feels true for you, you can repeat it in your own words to yourself. If it's not accurate, then you just change it and make it true.
Okay.
The spark that led to me creating this project was related to losing a job. And I feel really conflicted about not raising enough money to be able to hire Kim because of that. And I want this to be my new job, this podcast.
Yeah, that feels right.
Yeah. If it feels right, see what it feels like to say that to future Yowei in your own words. Doesn't have to be word for word, whatever is true for you.
So I just got laid off last year, and then I made a series about it. So lots of people know my sob story about being laid off. And I'm trying this new thing, trying to make a show that I really believe in. And I have a part-time gig right now. And I'm using my savings on this new venture. And yeah, I'm worried that if we don't make the fundraising goal, that I won't be able to make this my new job. And I won't be able to hire Kim to help us make the show. Yeah, I'm worried that it's going to be too much work, really, and that I'm going to not be able to do it.
Yeah. You're doing great, Yowei. Any questions you have for future Yowei on the date of the deadline? I'm sure you've got questions.
Well, I guess I'm curious what you are going to do on that day. How to take care of yourself so that you are not just frantically, obsessively, compulsively refreshing the Patreon page like you've been doing. I'm also curious how you're going to be there for Kim if you guys don't make it. And also just like make sure you have a moment together and it's not just really sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm wondering like, how are you going to dig deep and keep going if you don't make the goal?
Yeah.
And how you are going to feel being around people who know that you didn't make the goal, how you're going to face your listeners.
Okay, so lots of questions here. Yeah. We all have lots of questions for our future self.
Yeah.
So at this point, I'm going to invite you to reverse roles with yourself in the future. So switch positioning in your chair.
Okay.
So now you are Yowei on the day of the deadline for this goal. And you're sitting next to Yowei today, August 1st, 3 weeks in the past. And Yowei just expressed this anxiety and these fears about raising enough money to be able to hire Kim and not wanting to disappoint viewers and this risk that she's taking around starting this podcast and using her savings. And she wants to know, how are you managing today, not obsessively checking the Patreon page? And she wants to know how you're taking care of Kim and connecting with Kim, whether you've made this goal or not. And she really wishes that regardless of what happens, that you're able to be proud of what you've done and be grateful for the listeners. Maybe be grateful for Kim. Maybe to have gratitude for yourself too. Wonder, what do you want to say to... Yeah, go ahead.
What would I say to current day Yowei?
Yep.
Okay, well, I guess I first just want to say that I am very impressed that you decided to make this series last minute and pull this off. It's the fastest you've ever worked. And I'm proud that you did it. I want to give you a high five. I want to give you a hug.
Give her a high five.
And then I want you to like spend some time in the garden before it gets too hot to be outside. You're going to work out. You're going to have matcha. And then you are not going to look at the Patreon account. You are going to call Kim. I think I should send her something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I'm going to send her something so that she has something fun, something ridiculous, something that'll make her laugh. And I'm going to make sure to hang out with friends and family that day and do a little celebration, send a message out to listeners and Patreon members to give them the update. Maybe I'll send them a photo of how I'm celebrating no matter what happens.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to be okay.
Nice. And can I invite you to take like a body posture that would embody a sense of pride and gratitude for what you've accomplished on this day? Whatever's right for you.
I just want to be like, yeah, raising the roof.
Okay. Yeah, raise the roof. Yeah.
I'm raising the roof. Wow, I'm so corny. Future Yowei is really lame.
That's fine. And could you tell Yowei from the past what you want her to do or think of next time the anxiety comes up about getting to today, August 22nd.
All right, Yowei. Next time the anxiety comes up for you, I want you to take a deep breath, and I want you to think about how much fun you're having making this show, how much fun you've had, just where you are right now compared to where you were last year when you were down in the dumps. No matter what happens with this fundraising thing, it's small potatoes. It's going to be okay. Like, this is just a small little goal.
Right. Perfect. So go ahead and switch roles back.
Okay. Okay.
And take a moment to take in all those messages from future Yowei. See her raising the roof and feeling proud, feeling grateful.
Yeah.
And take in that last message about next time you feel this anxiety, to take a breath, roll those shoulders back, pat yourself on the back for what you've done. And see if there's any final message for future Yowei.
Well, you already know what happens. I won't ask. This is going to be the ultimate narrative cliffhanger that you were keeping from me, but that's okay. I feel like I could just keep saying, I'm proud of you, I'm proud of you, I'm proud of you, but I'm proud of you, future Yowei, and yeah, high five.
Does that feel like an okay place to end, Yowei?
Yeah, it does.
Awesome. All right. So you can come on back to yourself today. How was that for you?
Wow. Well, I felt like crying at multiple points. That probably happens a lot.
Yep.
You know, part of me was a little bit bashful. Like, you're saying silly things. Part of me was also worried, what are you going to say? Do you know what to say? But then something came.
Nice.
Oh, the other thing that I feel is like, I feel better. I feel more calm.
Yeah. One other thing about the psychodrama, a helpful thing to do might be to just choose an object in your space that could serve as a reminder of that message from future Yowei. To pick an object and keep that object nearby so that every time you look at it, it can be that reminder until you get to August 22nd.
Yeah, thank you so much, Scott, for helping me understand what the heck is going on with Proxy Conversations finally.
Yeah, thanks for trusting me.
That was Dr. Scott Giacomucci, an expert in group work and psychodrama, and the director of the Phoenix Center for Experiential Trauma Therapy in Media, Pennsylvania. You can find out more about Scott and his work at www.phoenixtraumacenter.com. We'll also link to his textbook about psychodrama in our show notes. So you did hear me make peace with not making our goal of reaching 1,000 paid Patreon members by August 22nd, but there is still time. We can still do it. A Patreon membership gets you exclusive monthly bonus episodes. This month, you'll hear the mystery of how psychodrama came to be a dominant therapy in the US, only to die decades later.
One of his other beefs was the power dynamics in psychoanalysis. He even referred to his patients as doctors.
This episode was produced by Kim Nederveen Pieterse and me, Yowei Shaw. It was mastered by Kyle Pulley. Theme music by Breakmaster Cylinder. Follow us on Instagram at ProxyThePod and rate and review us on iTunes. That stuff apparently helps. Next week, the final installment of this extremely meta series where I get to learn about one of my favorite subjects, ritual.